Thoughts like I've never, ever, ever, ever spoke on this in all my years of even sitting in front of a camera.
Peace that I was trying to find in all of this other stuff, jobs, girlfriends, holidays, house, whatever. I was looking for it in the wrong place.
I've been a bit quiet for, let's say, probably the last year in regards to content. A lot has changed.
I'm gassed that it's back more than anything.
I was so empty, but yet on the surface I was so full.
You couldn't have told me a year ago, just be, stop doing, let go of the will, let the will take itself. I wasn't hearing that, because that wasn't making sense to me.
My vulnerability is my superpower.
Oh, I love that.
It's my strength.
Bro, I don't even want to say much more after that. Trist, I am back not only with another episode, but I am back for my third season of Brown Therapy Podcast, and I am, number one, extremely excited. Number two, it feels amazing to be creating content again. As a lot of you know who do follow me and have followed the journey, I've been a bit quiet for, let's say, probably the last year in regards to content. A lot has changed, algorithms are changing, platforms are changing, and a lot's also changing in my own life. So I feel like the content that's going to be coming from me over the next few weeks, next few months, which will be season 3, number one will be very hard hitting, very authentic, but also that which really relates to me. And it was just the perfect person to bring on this show for the first episode. Just made so much sense. One, we've been speaking a lot off of camera. Two, a lot of where my mind's been going in this journey has been very relative to a lot of the content he puts out. At the moment, I'm looking at this camera, I will in a second be looking at this camera. To give a bit of context, we're doing this live via Zoom. And yeah, I mean, without further ado, man, my first guest on season 3 goes by the name of Alex Manzi. Just before I let him sort of introduce himself, the reason, because I always like to explain on this podcast why I pick people, so to speak. Something I always say is brand therapy is always about brands, business, and experiences in a therapeutic conversation. But above that, I always like to have conversations with someone I would seek out and genuinely have a hour conversation and leave there thinking like, that guy's mind's crazy, that girl's mind's crazy. Alex, I think going back now, I met Alex maybe in 2017. He had a different role, I had a different role. We was two total different spaces, but I think the mutual was still the mindset. And to be honest, correct me if I'm wrong, bro, I don't think it was actually about mindset, because you was at 1Extra at the time.
Yeah, I was.
So I can't remember what we spoke about. It was definitely Grow Daily. But to just give people context, and I'll hand over obviously to you, Alex, it was a conversation that was just quite generic at the beginning. If I remember rightly, I came up to City of London, up to BBC to meet you, and we ended up just having like a really long conversation. It was meant to be a really quick meeting, but it was a really long conversation. And then we just used to like touch base online. It was never anything too heavy. It was just sort of keeping tabs on what each other was doing. And then I think where it really started to connect was we kind of ended up going to similar spaces, and that's more mentally than career-wise. You sort of stripped back and went back to zero, so to speak, and I sort of done the same thing as well in my own way. And I think one of the main reasons, bro, just to let you know why I really wanted you on this show, is I learned so much from your work, number one, and I hope everyone who subscribed to my channel before they even finish this episode goes and subscribes to yours, because I genuinely love your channel, and I think I want the world to see it, because there's so much game. I put so much of people that I'm around onto it, bro. Like I promote it like it's my own. And that's because it's just real, it's hard hitting, and like I said to you, a lot of it is like what my dad tries to teach me, but in a more it's like when your friend teaches you something, you can take it in a bit easier. So yeah, without no further ado, I was rambling. Alex Manzi, thank you for joining us today, my brother.
Oh mate, what an intro! Thanks for that, man. That's awesome, man. And do you know what? I'm gassed to be like the first guest for the season 3, man. I'm gassed that it's back more than anything. And to be the first person that you've invited on to have a conversation with, man. That's like, yeah, man, it means a lot, man. So thank you for having me.
Nah, of course, bro, man. Bro, to be honest, like, I don't even know where to start with you. I think, let me not be selfish and just go straight into what I want to go into, and let me just give my audience a bit of an idea of yourself and sort of your journey to now. I'll sort of let you bring us up to speed on that.
Whew, all right, how long you got, man? I'll give you the shortened version of it, the abridged version.
Yeah.
So when I was like 18 to 25, I was very unhappy, unsatisfied in my life, very like depressed, you could even say. It was like suicidal thinking, stuff like that. Just thought my life was kind of like worthless and not really worth living anymore. And I had a moment, and the funny thing is, on paper, like my life looked great. I had a wicked job in advertising. I had like amazing girlfriend, good family. I was going on nice holidays with my friends, my family. I was on my way to like buying my first like flat. Had my own car, like loads of stuff going for me. It looked great on paper, but I was just miserable. And I had a breakdown in front of my ex, and that was me really like acknowledging for the first time for myself, but also saying it out loud to someone else, that I just didn't feel happy. And that moment kind of set me on this path of like, I don't know if you want to call it personal growth or self-discovery or just discovery, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it just put me in a place where it was like I wanted to create a change in my life. I wanted to experience something different to what I was experiencing. Like that I had a sense that like this can't be it, you know, there must be more to this kind of thing. And I went to like a few therapy sessions and it didn't really click for me. It felt like we were sort of digging in the wrong direction. So I started to like get into like self-help books. I was reading like things like Chimp Paradox, Power of Now, some spiritual books. I started to listen to podcasts like Lewis Howes, Gary Vee, like motivational and inspirational stuff. And I started to like meditate daily, started to exercise a bit more. Cleaned up my diet, was drinking less fizzy drinks. What else was I doing? Stopped like just eating junk in general, sweets, chocolate, biscuits, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And after a while I started to notice that actually, I think it was about a year, I started to notice that my outlook on life started to become a bit more positive. I started to see things in a more positive light. I started to feel a bit more excited about the future. And at the time I'd moved from advertising into working at One Extra, so I was around like amazing people. I was running the social media for One Extra, which I did for like 4.5 years. So I was like hanging out with like the presenters, the DJs, the production teams, the editors, the artists that were coming in the building, like going to the live events, like so much amazing stuff going on. And I was just really gassed. So I wanted to like share like my journey, but also like hear the journeys of the people that I was surrounded with at the time. And that's when I started my podcast, which was in the beginning of 2017, because a lot of the podcasts I was listening to back then were like Americans, like Lewis Howes, Gary Vee, like listen, it was like, yeah, they were great, but it's like, where's our voices in it? Like I'm from London, like where's UK, where's our voices at? So I started, which I would say was the first inspirational podcast in the UK, talking about things like mental health, personal development and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just started to reach out to the people that were in my circle, photographers, DJs, artists, people who work behind the scenes in the music industry, and started to share their stories. And the podcast started to build like a bit of a hype. And from that, I started to have people in work. The more I was sharing online as well about my story, I had people coming to me asking for like help and advice, and sort of like coming to me like I was able to help them. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like this feels a bit weird, because I was like still trying to figure stuff out myself. And I guess back then that was like my first taste of coaching. And then as my journey continued, I started to hear more about coaching. I started to hear about it in podcasts. It started coming up in conversations. I didn't really know what it was. I started to hear like this stuff about coaching. I just thought like coaching's like football coach, fitness coach, tennis coach. Like I didn't think like life coach or whatever you want to call it was a thing. And then it clicked that when I worked for a events and marketing agency about 4 or 5 years, no, probably longer than that, about 6 years before that, there was a guy that we did a project with who was a life coach. And I always remembered his name. So I hit him up on LinkedIn. His name is John Dashfield. And I said to him, oh, John, like, I'm really interested in coaching. I'd love to hear more about what you do. and we got together, we had lunch, and he just set me on this path of like, this is coaching, this is what it's about, like go and check out these books, and this is this other stuff which is like the sort of, he called it like the forefront of psychology, like talking about inside out or whatever you want to call it. Go and check this stuff out. And he just set me off on this path of like discovering all this stuff. And as time went on, coaching just made more and more sense to me, because I was getting more on my own journey, and I was able to see how my experience and my journey and the things that I'd done to turn my life around could be helpful for other people. And I was starting to see that I could help people do that. And that was through like the podcast, through the content I was putting out, but also through the conversations I was having. So after about a year and a half, I just decided, right, coaching is my thing, and I'm just going to dive straight in, go all in with it. I also wrote a book about my journey called The Search for Clarity, which I put out in 2020. And yeah, the podcast still exists, and that's bringing you up to speed with why we're here right now.
Cool. I'm gonna ask something that I think a lot of people face, and sort of just to start at your transition, because I've witnessed some of it from afar. And like you said, from the outside, on paper, everything was probably your most perfect career. Everything was like the perfect setting, perfect career. Like I was gonna say, I can't swear, but it's my own podcast. For fuck's sake, you worked at 1Extra. Like at one point, let's be honest, just being in the building alone, it was huge, especially with like the passion we have for music. So what was it that led from you, what was that transition like? Let's speak about that, because you've effectively, from an egotistic point of view, girlfriend, house, good job, happiness. But there was obviously something that was missing. But what I want to touch on was, what was it that was missing? And was it missing? And I know you know why I've said that as well, but what was it that was missing?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because someone started saying, like one of my friends has started saying this recently. He said there's a piece missing. Yeah. Not peace as in P-I-E-C-E, but peace as in P-E-A-C-E.
Yeah, I love that. Love that.
And that's what it was. It was like, I was living this life, and don't get me wrong, like I loved the 1Extra job. I loved it. It was a dream job for me, because I started a music blog back in 2010 with like two of my mates from school, and we were running like club nights, events, like we were blogging, interviewing people. So to get a job at 1Extra, which is basically doing all of that and getting paid well for it, and like being the voice of online of 1Extra at a time where 1Extra was popping.
100%.
Like, you know, artists like Skepta and Stormzy were popping off, and like the whole scene was just, the movement really started again. It was amazing. Like it was such an incredible journey, but there was a piece missing. Yeah. And the piece that was missing was that it was like it was always like, okay, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get that job. I'll be happy when we do this thing. I'll be happy when I get that project off the ground. I'll be happy when the podcast reaches X amount of downloads. I'll be happy, you know, when I get my flat. And it was always like, there was always like a when at it. Yeah. And the thing that I realized is that I wasn't happy now. And that to me became like the most obvious thing. And it's not to say like, oh, you need to radically change your life to be happy now. It's because it's nothing to do with the external world and what you're doing. It's about the peace that's inside. Like, are you connected to that peace? Can you access and can you come from that place of peace no matter what you're doing? And that's the thing that changed for me. And because I was on the path that I was on, like I said, it just led me towards coaching, because the more that I was discovering and the more that I was consuming and reading and learning from coaches and mentors and, you know, the guests that I was having on my podcast, the more I was seeing like, this is really working for me. And by the time I left 1Extra, I was like, bro, when I tell you, I was so happy. And not because I was leaving 1Extra, I was just happy within myself, innit?
So
I was like,
just to interject there, what was it? So you said you went through a process and you was learning a lot from the people you're speaking around. But when you say finding that peace, I know people will hear this and think, okay, but how? You know how it's always how? How did you find that peace?
The answer that I want to give isn't the answer that's going to be helpful, right? So let me just be real.
Can we do both?
We can do both.
Let's do both. Let's do both.
So the answer that's not going to be helpful is that there isn't anything you need to do. There is no how. how do I be happy? It's like, if you could be happy, would you? I tweeted that yesterday.
Yeah, I
Like,
saw
if you
that.
could be happy,
I saw
would
that.
you?
Yeah.
Most people are going to say yeah. So then be happy, innit?
Yeah.
And it's really simple like that. And I know that doesn't sound helpful, which is why I kind of held back on it. But the thing that is helpful, and what's been extremely helpful for me, is realizing that underneath everything, right, at our core as human beings, right, if we want to go super deep right now, at our core,
Let's go deep, man. We're here for it, man. Let's go deep.
Bro, let's go in, man. Let's go into
bro.
the vortex. At our core, we are peace. You know, you look out at nature, for example. Nature is always at peace. Yeah, it has seasons, and yeah, sometimes it's snowing and the leaves fall off the trees and there's barren lands and there's wildfires. But generally speaking, nature is always at peace. And it's the same with us. So that peace, what I've come to realize is like, it's an underlying foundation of our lives, right? If we had like a button at the back of our head, which was like a reset to factory settings, you know, like when we were babies, when we were born, it's like, boom, if we press that, we would be at peace. We would be completely in touch with our innate well-being, because innately we are all well. We are all mentally healthy.
Yeah.
And that's our base level. So anything that comes above that or outside of that or away from that is an additional experience of life. It's something that we're experiencing in addition to the peace.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that changed for me, is realizing that the peace that I was trying to find in all of this other stuff, jobs, girlfriends, holidays, house, whatever, I was looking for it in the wrong place, because the peace hasn't ever gone anywhere.
Yeah.
It's just I wasn't seeing it for where it actually was. The peace is always there.
Yeah.
And people are probably listening to this like, oh yeah, but I've got like this thing going on in my life. And
Yeah,
and I get
100%.
it. Like, I've been there, innit? I've been there, but I'm telling you,
don't get it twisted. Like, I'm definitely going to speak for the people, just because for many years, like I've delivered similar messages, and I've faced backlash of, yeah, but it's easy for you. Yeah, but this, but that. And what I think is that when you're never going to find what you want to find if you don't allow yourself to find it. So if you come into this conversation or space like this and you're already like, then this isn't for you. Moving back to what you just said, back in like 2015, 2016, I took a trip to LA, and I had this phase, I think I told you about this before, where it was like, I call it my J. Cole phase. I stopped wearing jewelry, I grew my hair, I stopped eating meat, I stopped drinking drinks with sugar. I just really got into like that understanding what was important, and God rest his soul, Black the Ripper, he was a big part of prompting that for me. RIP to Black the Ripper, because his mind was in a very similar place. So I came back from this LA trip, just really hating things, bro, like materials. Like I got to the point where I just felt like I was so empty, but yet on the surface I was so full. I was acquiring so many things. I had the latest this, the latest that. I was hitting all my financial goals. I was hitting all my tangible goals. But I felt so empty. And I'll never forget, I came back on the day, literally on the way from the airport, I was messaging my mum and dad, because the trip done a lot for me. People say when you go to LA, you get LA blues. But it really, that was the beginning of me wanting to move from the UK, because I just found energies was different, and I connected with a lot of my tribe in LA, and just that first bit of traveling that really opens your eyes. And I came back and I messaged my dad, and I was talking to my dad, who was going back and forth. And anyone who's followed my journey knows my dad's a very deep spiritual guy, who probably would correct me in saying spiritual and say there's a better term for that. But for the surface and for the masses, we would see it as quote unquote spiritual, yeah? And I said to him, I think in life, like, you're never really becoming. I think really you're just unbecoming. Like I said to him, Dad, I feel like all I'm doing is just stripping back, but then it looks like I'm acquiring. And he loved that phrase, and it's very rarely that I give him the gems. And he loved that phrase, and he found a quote a few days later basically saying it, and it has been his display picture since 2016. And I'll even insert it in this so people can see. And I say that to say this, like, I have often believed and agreed that we come into life, and something, obviously, one of the main things I kind of started really getting into your content about was this whole becoming and being and doing. We come into life as a blank canvas. This is just my opinion, yeah? And I love to obviously hear yours. We come into life as a blank canvas, and we put so much on top of us. Expectations, other people's opinion, the society we're in, the music, the food, the everything. It's all we create it every single day from a baby. When we hear swearing, when we see frustration, when we see emotion, when we see our mum crying, our dad crying, or this or that, we condition our brain to know, okay, so when something goes wrong, I shout. When something goes wrong, I scream. When something goes wrong, I swear. Or when I wake up, I have a coffee. Or when I go to bed, I have a drink before bed. And I think life is literally doing that to us every single day. And then it's like, and this part I would like you to shed light on, it's like we get to a point, and maybe not everyone does, but I've got to a point, and I know you've got to a point where you're adding. And then you get to a point where you realize, wait, I need to take, and strip. Because you look and you realize how much you've got on you that's, number one, sometimes you didn't even bloody put there yourself. And number two, that isn't actually useful. And number three is just because you thought it was the right thing to add on. That could be a belief in regards to how you deal with arguments. It could be your morning routine. It could just be the fact that it's normalized in your household to shout. Like I grew up in a household, we was loud as hell. We was always shouting. So now I've grown to realize when I'm in relationships as an adult, if I get in an argument with my partner, shouting is normal. Because that's just what I grew up. But then you start to realize that this isn't normal. So what would you say it is, or what happens when we get to that point?
I think what you said was really true, by the way, and I love that the way that you were saying we're always adding, and the way that I see it is like the mind, like the physical mind is always creating. It's creating a narrative. It's creating a story. And it's like, the way I see it is like, my mind is like an activity monster. So it's like, if I see something and it's like, I don't feel comfortable right now, say as an example, right? My mind's going to go, oh, you don't feel comfortable? Well, let me show you all the reasons why you shouldn't feel comfortable right now. Because there's this thing and that thing and that thing and that thing and that
100%.
And it's constantly doing that. It's constantly creating a narrative based on what we're experiencing moment to moment, right? But if we can understand that's what's going on, and it's the mind is just creating and weaving narratives to essentially, because it thinks it's trying to keep us safe, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if you think back to like, I think it's like 200,000 years is apparently how long the human brain has been evolved for, right? 200,000 years ago, the world was very different. It's like if we were walking down a path in the woods or something and we heard a rustling in the bush, our mind would be like, oh, what's that sound? Could be a tiger, could be a threat. Maybe we should move away from here and get to higher ground and get to safety.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's go do that. So we go and do it. And then the mind would be like, see, look, I kept you safe. Told you that would be like this. Whereas whereas like now, it's like the mind still does the same thing, but it doesn't translate as well into the real world because we're never really under a threat. Okay, there are threats out there, don't get me wrong. I don't want to take that away. Like, of course there are. But generally speaking, 99% of the time, we're never under a threat. But the mind treats it like we are. So the mind will be like, I don't know, oh, you're stressed. Well, here's what happens when you're stressed. And because you're stressed, you should try and do this. And now you need to try and do that. And it's always adding something to the story. And it's trying to like fill in the gaps of information for us to try and like show us like I'm doing my job to keep you safe here. And we get to a point where it's like, you know, okay, I need to like, for me anyway, I won't speak for anyone else, but personally speaking, I was accumulating all this stuff, be it experiences, be it physical stuff, be it money, whatever it was, right? I was accumulating all this stuff. And I got to a point where I was just like, what am I accumulating all this stuff for?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, do I actually need it? Like, because the way that I see things, that it isn't in like life only unfolds as a constant stream of nows. So it's like we have now,
and then
now,
that's gone, and then
and
now,
and now, and that's all that's ever happening. So if that's how we're always experiencing life, which to me it is, right now, in this moment, exactly right now, what do I need? I maybe need some oxygen to breathe. Some water, just in case, but I don't actually need the water right now. I don't need food. Maybe some clothes to keep me warm. I've got a roof over my head, but do I need that right now? Not really, because it's daytime.
Yeah.
Do I need my laptop? Yeah, okay, maybe in this moment because we're doing this, yeah. But like, generally speaking, so it's like I started to realize there's not much that we need outside of each moment.
Okay.
And each moment's different.
Sorry, Alex, I'm going to interject there because I can hear the audience in my head, and I want to extract the real. Because one thing about this is I mean, even an hour, 2 hours isn't going to serve us the justice of the quality of conversations that I have with you, and just the amount that I think these conversations are needed, especially with my audience. Now, there's people who hear what you've just said, and their first thing is, okay, but how can you say I don't need this and need that? My bills are due, I need a house, I need a job. Like, it sounds all great, mate. It's all spiritual and that, but the fact is that I've got this pressure on me, and I really do. And just before you dive into it, and throughout this conversation, especially because it's my first episode back, I'm gonna just be dropping a few things that have been happening with me off camera that my audience aren't aware of. And that was me. That was me. I put my hands up. Like, when I say that was me, the understanding that we're speaking on now, yes, I did say to my dad in 2015 what I said, but I went like that. And that's the truth. I went like that. I had that phase, my J. Cole phase. Then I became Meek Mill again. Do you get what I mean? So and the reason that happened is because persona and ego, which I definitely want to touch on, and building a character, building self. So in the process of me building self and creating this new me, and then, so it's almost like you create a persona, you step into the persona and get addicted and attached to that persona, but forget that you actually just created it. There isn't even, it's nothing, it's just it's destroyable, but you become so attached to it that even, I don't know, like someone saying you may need to take 2 weeks off because of your health, you will literally fuck your health off because of this persona. I can't, I'm this person, I'm that person, I'm this. So going back to the point of just pressure and life and all these things that are really, that quote unquote are real at the end of the day. When you're in it, it feels real. When I was in it and I've got this financial issue going on, this legal issue going on, backlash on the internet, pressure, feel like the whole world's against you, that is real. Having to find a place to live and be able to, it is real. So how do you stay calm in that? Like, how do you find the peace in that?
I'll give you an example, right? So recently, I was getting caught out by some of the thinking I was having around, like, I need to be earning more money. And I had a conversation with my coach about it, and he sat me down and he wrote my name at the top of a bit of paper, and he drew a line down the middle. And on one side, he wrote, I need more money. And on the other side, he wrote, I don't need more money. And on the I need side, he was like, okay, what's going to happen if you need more money? And I was like, well, I'm going to, want to create more clients. I'm going to need to, like, grow my business. I need the money because I got my bills to pay. If I don't earn the money, I'm going to lose my car. If I need money to eat. I need money to survive, basically, was I need a roof over my head, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then we went to the other side of the paper, which was like, okay, if you don't need money, and he said, for example, let's say you didn't earn another penny for the rest of the year, and this was like a couple months ago, so it was like May. If you don't earn another penny for the rest of the year, what's going to happen? I was like, well, if I don't earn any more money, I won't be able to eat. I won't have a roof over my head. My business will, start failing. And I listed a bunch of stuff, and he was like, okay, and if that stuff happened, then what? What would you do? I was like, well, if I didn't earn any more money, I'd have to live with my parents. I'd have to ask people to give me food, water, and I listed a bunch of other stuff. And he was like, so he goes, where are you living now? I was like, with my parents. Because in 2020, I moved back in with my parents.
Yeah.
To save money. Well, pre-pandemic in 2019, actually, I moved back in with my parents to save money. And then the pandemic happened. So I'm still here. I'm moving soon, though. Yeah. But he was like, so if you don't earn any more money, he said, you're going to live with your parents. So you've got a roof over your head. Will they feed you? I was like, yeah. He was like, okay, so you'll be fed. Will they have water? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, so you have water. Do you have clothes? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, so you have clothes And what was the other one? I was like, what about I'll need money to spend? He's like, well, if you asked your parents to loan you some money, would they? I was like, yeah, probably. He's like, okay, so you'll have money. So he's like, so you don't actually need anything because you'll be covered. You'll be good. It's not preferable. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
that situation, that scenarios is not preferable for anyone. And anyone who's listened to this will probably agree. But also, I'm sure most people would probably agree it's highly unlikely that will happen.
Yeah.
It's even if I didn't try that hard, it's highly unlikely that I won't make any more money the rest of this year.
Yeah.
So seeing that straight away just ripped to shreds this story I had of like, oh, I need to earn so much more money right now because I need to like pay my bills. And I was like, no, actually, I don't. I'm good. I will be good. Now, I'm not saying everyone's going to be in that position, but there is a version of that will suit everyone's own situation, right? So straight away, that story was shredded.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at it like, well, who's the me that thinks I need the money? And this comes down to who's the self, right?
Yeah. Talk to them,
the
man.
me that needs the money.
Talk to them,
yeah,
man.
Let's go.
Just before you go into this, like this for me just slapped me in the face. And again, the reason I keep interjecting, I know sometimes they're in my comments saying, let them talk, Trist, let them talk. This is my show and I got some shit to say, yeah? The reason why this really got me was because my own personal experience was I built up a massive brand. Like it felt good. Different brands, different companies, invest in different companies, move to Dubai, hey, living your best life, and very ego-based. Like even my message started becoming ego-based. It became more about looking cool than giving real gems. And I got to a point where I was as everyone knows, my brand's about personal development. I'm so focused on next goal, build, change. There's so much change. I'm not saying change is bad, but then I got to a point where this whole persona got damaged by the internet and by the public and by a few business issues, but I didn't. This did. And when I realized that, it changed everything. And I realized that around the time of watching your content. And when I saw that title of Who is this self? Was it Who is this self you're developing? Is that right?
Yeah.
For me, that slapped me in the face because that was such a common sentence for me. Self-development, art self-development, build, attack. But then it got to the point of where I realized, well, what I've built isn't me. I'm me. That's what I've built. Like, just in case anyone misses that, I'm me, and that's what I've built. That's who you create. You are you. And I think you probably would explain that a lot better than me, but the whole who is the self you're developing, if we can just get into that, please, bro.
Well, yeah, it's like you said, man. It's like the self. When we say, I heard it said like this once. When you say I or me or my or self, who is the I that you're referring to? The I that you're referring to is an idea.
Yeah.
It's a concept.
Yeah.
The idea of you is made up, right? And people are like, that sounds like some woo-woo shit.
Yeah.
Hear me out, right?
Yeah, they will be.
Hear me out. Let's do a little exercise, right? Because I think this is going to be the most helpful way to do it. So, Trist, I'm going to use you as the subject here. But for anyone who's listening or watching, I want you to answer these questions for yourself. So where I'm asking Trist, like I want you guys to answer it for yourself, right?
Sick.
So Trist, that persona that you described, right? Who is that Trist?
That is, that's a version of me that I've led myself to believe I am. And a lot of that has come from the feedback of external. So I've allowed people to tell me that's who I am.
So if you described that Trist, what words would you use to describe them?
Ambitious, successful, go-getter, financially good, secure, motivator, the motivator guy, businessman, so on and so forth.
And how does that Trist live his life?
That Trist is just fast-paced, on the go, always hitting, attacking, just always just
like the sun shines out of his arse. Yeah, he's just amazing. He's just always doing everything he's supposed to do. He's this great person that we see day to day on the internet.
And why does he do all of those things?
Because he genuinely has a passion for learning, and when he learns, he wants to teach other people, and when he learns, he wants to show other people that just learning and just changing the way you think can change your life, and that's something he experienced, so he wants everyone else to experience it too.
So what if none of that's true? What if all of that has just been made up?
Then I would be stripped back down to nothing, which I felt has happened for me. And I think I would have a massive reality check to stop attaching myself to everything I've just said to you and be okay with what is rather than what I think is.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? The you who thinks it is the same you who's created that story, that's created that self.
100%.
And it's the same you who thinks it is the self.
Yeah.
Right? It's one in the same. But that you that thinks it is the self that has been created, like through all of that stuff that you said, right?
Yeah.
Isn't the real you. Because who you really are lives far beyond that. Who you really are is what we were talking about earlier, is the peace, it's the love, it's the abundance, it's the eternal energy that flows through the universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's who you really are.
Yeah.
You know, that's the zero, as I call it, right? That's the zero, the foundation of who you are, who I am, who we all are. Everything else is additional to that. Everything else is a plus. Everything else is created in a way. So this idea of self is something that individually we've all created. Myself was very different. Myself was, like Alex, the fun-loving, meditation guy, the podcaster, the, successful coach, the this, the that. So when I was thrown this idea of actually, if all of that was taken away and I wasn't able to earn any more money for the rest of the year, I would still be okay. That story just fell apart. And don't get me wrong, there's still parts of it that I believe, right?
I was just going to say that,
it was like a house of cards. It was I could see the fallacy in it. I could see the weakness in the story.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to do that little exercise with you is because I just wanted to show people when you refer to yourself, you're referring to the story that you have created about yourself. The same way I had created a story back in the day that my life wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't doing what I loved. All of that stuff was still a made up story, and therefore that became my experience of life. Whereas when I started to see through that story, my life started to look a lot more abundant, a lot more peaceful, a lot more loving. And I'm still, navigating some of that story now. I'm still seeing through it. But the more that I see through it, the more I return back to zero. But understanding that I'm never fully going to be at zero, because I'm always going to be experiencing something from the perspective of self.
Yeah.
It's just whether or not I buy into the idea of self or not.
Okay, so the idea of buying into self or not, and I'm going to just play, I'm not even dumb because you can be very intelligent and still not grasp this. My dad said to me this year at some point, or maybe last year, "Who are you?" And all of my responses were what I do or how I seem. And again, I'll say this and people will watch this and think, so what was your answer? But I can't answer it for someone else. Only you will be able to answer that. But you saying about believing self, let's just dive a bit deeper into this separation between us and self. Because someone's going to sit here and think, I don't get it, yeah? How are you not self? You are yourself. Can we explain that in a bit of a different way?
Yeah, let me give you the example of let me give you the example of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Right. We're gonna take it franchisey, right?
Yeah.
We're going big here. Let's use Iron Man, right? Tony Stark is the character who created Iron Man. He's the person who created the persona and the suit and the superhero Iron Man. He's as much Iron Man as he's not Iron Man. He's not physically Iron Man because Iron Man is him in the suit of Iron Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Him, Tony Stark, is an entirely different entity, right? So if we look at it in that way, and I've got another good example I'll use after this as well, but if we look at it in that way, when Tony Stark is in the suit, he is Iron Man, right? He's created this persona of like, oh, I'm this hero, I save people, I've got all of these powers, I'm leader of the Avengers, I'm going to help save the world from Thanos and all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But Tony Stark himself isn't Iron Man. He plays the role of Iron Man, but he is not Iron Man. So if we take that one level above Tony Stark, there is who we really are is that universal consciousness or universal energy, universal peace, whatever you want to call it, right? And that universal peace is playing the role of Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And then Tony Stark is playing the role of Iron Man.
Yeah.
But none of it is, the Tony Stark isn't real in a way, because it's just the universe playing the role of itself as a character. And then Iron Man is the character that Tony Stark then plays as Tony Stark.
So question for you from the audience. What is real?
Yeah.
In that equation, what is real?
What is real to me is the universal consciousness, right? The whatever you want to call it, spirit, some people call it God. Like, I'm not like super religious, but like that's what people refer to, in my opinion, when they say God.
Yeah.
Right? And it's one in the same. There's no difference between the universal consciousness or the life force or the energy of the world, of the universe, is no different in me than it is in you, than it is in the tree outside my window, than it is in my dog, than it is in, someone who lives in South America. Like, it's the same. There's no separation in that. The only separation, the only way separation exists is because we think that it exists. I think I'm different to you. I think I'm different to the dog. I think I'm different to the tree. And I know this is sounding a bit woo-woo for some people, right? So I'm going to dial it back in a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to use this example, right? If you go to sleep tonight, Trist, right, and you have a dream. I think we've used this example before.
I like this.
You have a dream, right? Trist is asleep in Dubai, and he's dreaming of Trist in London. Trist in London is going about his day-to-day life, meeting his friends, going to parties, hanging out with people, going to restaurants, doing whatever, driving his car, doing whatever he does, right? But you know that the Trist in London isn't the real Trist, because the real Trist is the Trist that's sleeping in Dubai. So if something happens to Trist in London, in the dream, Trist in Dubai isn't affected. So for example, Trist is in London in the dream, he has an argument with someone, that person punches him in the face. That version of Trist in the dream feels the pain, feels the agony, feels, I'm hurt by it, okay?
Yeah.
But when Trist in Dubai wakes up, he doesn't feel the effect of being punched in the face in the dream in London, right?
Yeah.
So let's go one step beyond that again, right? To the consciousness, to the energy, to the universal life source, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever happens to me, Alex, or you, Trist, here and now, the consciousness that we share isn't affected by that.
Yeah.
It's one in the same. It doesn't get affected by it. It doesn't get affected by my experience. It doesn't get affected by my feelings. It doesn't get affected by my pain, my suffering, my happiness, my joy. It just is.
Yeah.
So when we're pointing at things and we're saying, just be with what is, to me, that's what we're pointing at.
Mm-hmm.
Be with what is. And knowing that that's there doesn't mean we have to go around and not give a shit about anything.
Okay,
It's just resting in the understanding, right?
I'm glad you said that as well, Alex, because I think, because I've spread some of this message to people I care about, like people that are going through maybe what I've just been through, or just stressed or under. Let the will take itself. I wasn't hearing that, because that wasn't making sense to me. And when I do explain to people that are in that space, I feel like their common thing is, so are you saying to me, just let go? And before you even dive into that, from my own personal experience, my answer is yes. Because there is such a beauty in letting go. And we're so attached to go a little bit further, more so into ego, like we think we have so much control over how things go. And that is the ego. That's literally the definition of the ego. Like, it is there to make us think we control this, that. Oh, if we had just done this, that wouldn't have happened. If we had just done this, that wouldn't have happened. Now, in some religions, like referring to Islam, just because I live in the biased Islamic country, they have like a concept which I strongly agree with, even though I'm not necessarily religious, is that things are already written. And the concept of that is, it isn't me and you doing this, it's already done, it's already written. And the reason why I like that concept is because I think when we get into this state of, oh, but I have to make this happen to make this happen to make this happen, all we've approached that with is friction, which can lead to illness, which can lead to more frustration, which can lead to things going wrong in this repair state you think you're getting into. So you think you're about to go and fix things, but you've got panic mode, you've got the panic coat on, about to go and fix things. So to sort of give a simpler metaphor, my opinion, you can't go and fix something, and you put something out the other day, which was literally what I used to teach in my sales sessions. We used to say to everyone when you was, this is going back many years, when you're learning how to sell, stop speaking so fast, because you wouldn't learn to drive a car at 60 miles per hour. You learn to drive it at 10, 20 miles per hour, even slower than the road. Why? Because that way you can really learn. And I think it's the same as approaching issues or obstacles or going through shit or whatever it may be. There's no point having this whole mindset of do, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta do this, and think that we're gonna get peace with that. The two energies collide. So what I wanna go back to with you, Alex, is people that are looking at that mindset and thinking, so what are you saying to me? Just literally let go? Do I not stop picking up the phone calls or the money that's owed? Do I stop putting the lights on? I need to pay my electricity? What do I do? Not go to work? Like, what would you say to that?
I mean, I can't speak for anyone else's situation, right? So I'm not going to try and do that, but I'll speak from my own, right? The moment I've let go of trying to do a bunch of stuff to create a specific outcome, thinking that once I create that outcome, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah.
I actually became happy.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, anything I've ever struggled with, anything, right? Be it depression, anxiety, be it relationship troubles, be it, you know, worrying about money, being it, thinking I'm not good enough, whatever it is, right? Whatever I've struggled with in my life, it's because I've wanted to get beyond that thing to be happy.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if I choose to be happy now, then that stuff has less impact on how I suffer.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the stuff goes away and problems go away, but they don't seem as big of a problem as they once did.
Yeah.
And I actually find, like you were using the driving example, right? It's a really good one. If you're driving at 60 miles an hour, you're going to miss a bunch of stuff on the street, right? If you're driving down the motorway and you're passing by, you know, fields and stuff, you're going to miss a bunch of stuff. If you're driving down a road at 20 miles an hour, you're going to see a lot more. And the same thing goes for life, right? When you're driving or living or coming from a place where you're not in a rush to try and get somewhere because you think it's going to give you something, you experience more.
Yeah.
You see more, you receive more.
Yeah.
And the only reason that someone, or again, I don't want to speak for someone else, I'll speak for myself. The only reason I've ever wanted to earn more money is because I genuinely believed it was going to make me happier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I've seen it can't. It can't. You can't be any more happy when you reach a certain point than you can be or have the potential to be now, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you a really good example of this. I was reading a Tyson Fury book. It's called Behind the Mask, I think. And he talks about the build up to the Klitschko fight where he won the heavyweight title for the first time. And he talks about it like, my whole life was leading to this point. Years of training, years of fights, you know, my whole life had been leading me to this point. And, you know, I thought that the moment that I won the heavyweight championship belt, my life would be complete. I would be so happy and I would be so at peace and everything would be great. And he says in the book, like, not in these words, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he basically says, like, when he was announced at the end of the fight that he was the winner, he was like, I felt amazing. I felt on top of the world, like I'd completed life. Everything I'd ever worked for, I'd achieved.
Yeah.
And 3 minutes later, I felt exactly the same as I felt before the fight.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying is, like, if you're not able to be happy now, then you're not going to be happy when.
Yeah.
Because that thing that I've thought was going to make me happy when I got there, is maybe it has momentarily, but it's been a very short-term thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the happiness that I feel and the peace that I feel now is a lot more longer lasting because it's always there.
I heard someone call
it.
I can't remember who it was, but someone called it destination addiction. So it's just a concept of always thinking, when I get. And I think, from my opinion, I think where that comes from is I think it starts at the young age of just comparison. And that's why I think so much of like bringing up children, like I studied child psychology quite in depth and I find it really interesting. And that's why you have to be so hands-on and aware of what's going on with your child, because you could put them into a room which automatically leads to that. And then straight away they've grown up thinking that they're not enough compared to this, and that can go on for so long. As you know, like we get to the ages that we're at now, and these things come up in adult relationships. These are things that we start to see pop up on your day-to-day basis. And I think that concept of looking externally, God knows, I have no clue where exactly it starts. I definitely think it is obviously at childhood, but that's the thing that I think we need to unwire and realize how much we already have in us. Because we look for things, we look for devices, we look for vices, we look for experience, we look for so many external things, but we very rarely sit with ourselves, which even leads me on to like meditation. Obviously, I know you're quite big on meditation, and to be fair, like I've always been big on it, but I'm very inconsistent on it. And that's been for years. And I remember going back to maybe like 2010 when I first started meditating, and I remember saying to my mum, like, what's meant to happen? And I just want to touch on that very briefly, because I think a lot of people, especially within my audience, I know they have the difficulty with thinking, I'm not doing it right. And I heard something the other day in a film. It was it's a Jamie Foxx film. Basically, he's wrongly accused. I can't remember. It's on Netflix. Really good film. He's wrongly accused, and he's basically on trial for it. And Michael B. Jordan, amazing film. And in the film, he's doing a life sentence. And again, he didn't do it. Every time he starts panicking and getting anxious, like for example, on days where he had court hearings and appeals, his next door says to him, Jamie Foxx says to his next door, they're talking through the wall, and he's basically calming him down. He just says, look, breathe in and out, breathe in and out. He doesn't mention the word meditation. He just literally says, breathe in and out, and he starts telling him what to imagine. He tells him, close your eyes. And this is talking your next door on a lifer's wing, basically, talking him off of the cliff, because he's about to feel suicidal. He's got nothing to live for in his eyes, because he's signed up to, or been forced to sign up to, obviously being in jail for the rest of his life. And he says to him, breathe in and breathe out, and then he starts creating an environment in his head that is so far from that jail cell. It's like beautiful grass, green, trees. Bear in mind, these guys haven't seen this for maybe 30 plus years, 10, 15 plus years. And every time it calms him down. And when I watched it, I literally just thought, that's meditation. And for me, why it knocked home a bit clearer is because he kept saying the sentence, which I think a lot of people should. These titles, they're amazing and we all use them, but let's detach from meditation and self-help. And I'm really starting to get to a point, I don't know about you, but where I don't like these words anymore, because they're getting rebranded and they've got tarnishes naturally, and they've got connections. He was using the phrase, quieten your mind. And I think that was just like, and a lot of us look for that in other things. Some people smoke, drink, whatever it may be. But let's just speak a bit on that, the importance of it and the effects that you feel, because I know you're really into that.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I've stopped meditating as much.
Really?
Because I tell you why. It's because I've realized that the practice of meditation and the state of meditation are two very different things.
Okay, yeah, let's
The
talk
practice
about
of
it.
meditation is what you were just describing, or for me, what it was sitting down for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and focusing on my breath, observing my thoughts, watching my thoughts come and go,
Yeah,
etc., etc. The state of meditation is the quietened mind, right? And we can all do a version of
permanently,
this right now,
full
right?
stop.
Everyone who's listening can do a version of this right now, right? Whatever you're thinking right now, just look for the space between the thoughts. Look for the space between the words of the thoughts. It's always there. It doesn't go anywhere. The state of meditation is always flowing through us. It's just whether or not we're aware of it or not.
Yeah,
So the reason that I've stopped meditating so much is because I've realized that actually the state of meditation is something that I can live through in any moment. Because again, it doesn't go anywhere. It's the same thing we've been talking about, the zero, the peace, the life source, the energy, that's what it is. And all the practice of meditation does, for me, again, I don't speak for anyone else, but for me, has helped me to see what the state of meditation feels like or looks like, or however you want to describe it.
yeah.
And when you're sat there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, even 5 minutes, and you just got your eyes closed, you're sat cross-legged or you're lying down, and you're just noticing your thoughts without clinging onto them, without attaching anything to them, you're just noticing your thoughts go by. That's accessing the state of meditation.
So,
It's like-
sorry, Alex, I'm going to jump in there. So when you say accessing your thoughts, are you doing anything with them, or are you just being aware they're there?
Just aware they're there. It's like meditation. So I heard this, I can't remember who said it. I think it was like Joe Dispenza or someone. I think he describes meditation as the word literally means to get familiar with. So when you're meditating, you're getting familiar with your thoughts, or you're getting familiar with observing your thoughts. And that's what it is. The state of meditation is realizing that I'm not the one thinking my thoughts. I am the one who is experiencing and observing the
I
thoughts.
like that.
That's the state of
powerful.
meditation.
Yeah,
And when you see that actually the thoughts that I have in any moment are what dictate the experience that I'm feeling right now. So I could be sat here right now and a thought will pop into my head of like, is what I'm saying making sense to this audience? And it has many times during this conversation. If I grab onto that thought and give it attention,
yeah.
my experience is going to be
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, shit,
yeah.
like, am I saying
Nah,
the right
same.
thing? Am I doing the right thing? Does
Same,
Trist get what
yeah,
I'm saying?
same,
Does the audience
same,
think-
yeah.
You know, and people who are listening to this might even have the thought of like, I don't understand what this guy's saying. And
you
their
know
experience
what?
is like, I don't get this conversation.
And even to jump on that as well, even for other creators, that's a really good point you just said. Like, it's so easy to host things, and you start, and this is a tip I would say, you can't think about that, because then you're not actually present. If I sit here and start thinking, okay, what gems are we gonna cut up? What's the best part that Alex is saying? Let me get him to say this. That's why I'm not really a preparer, because then I'm not present. I'd just rather conversate and record. So yeah, I think that the way you just said that, and something that came to mind is, I don't know how, if you come across these types of people a lot, but I often do, and I used to say this myself. I used to say I'm an overthinker. And there's like a whole culture of it. It's like cool. It's like there's memes, and there's just, it's like almost that part of like the toxic culture. I'm an overthinker. I'm an overthinker. And when I used to say it, I only speak for myself. I used to say it in the sense of, I could think myself, and this is deep. I could think myself into any mood. Yeah, I have the power within my mind to think myself into any mood. But we often think that's negative. But that's only negative if you don't have, and I hate this word because this word might be a bit, if you don't have control over it. So what I mean by that is, if you are an overthinker, where it gets to the point where you start thinking and you are controlled. So you are controlled. You're getting taken from this mood to that mood, to this mood, to that mood, and now you're back in the trauma, and then you're in the pain. What would you, before I even say anything, what would you say is the right thing to do in that position?
You know, the first thing that came to my mind is, who's the you that's the overthinker?
You know, 100%,
again,
100%.
for me, like I can identify with that in some way, but then that's me creating an identity around being an overthinker, the same way I created an identity of being depressed.
But let's say you was in that space. But let's say, Alex, like right now that, because I agree with you, but let's say that happened. What would your guidance be? Let's say right now I'm just sitting there and I get myself into a mood. I start thinking about something that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, hate that person. And I'm really now in the space of 10 minutes in a shit mood. We've all been there. I am now overthinking. So what people go around and say, oh yeah, I'm an overthinker. But really, I'm sure you probably agree, it's that you've allowed your thoughts to observe you rather than you observe your thoughts, maybe?
Yeah, I would say that you've bought into the narrative of your thinking. That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone who says that, right, and I've been there, right. So again, I'll speak on my own experience. When I've been caught in the thinking and started to experience overthinking, it feels like, I'm in this mood, or now I'm in that mood, but that mood never lasts.
Yeah.
It moves on eventually. Sometimes, like, don't get me wrong, in years gone by, it might have taken days or weeks for that mood to shift.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, right? Yeah. Nowadays, like it might not even be an hour. It might not even be half an hour. Sometimes it's not even 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like realizing that, I might be experiencing this mood now. It's not forever.
Yeah.
It will pass.
Yeah.
And the less attention that I give to it, the less I keep buying into the story. Again, the mind is an activity monster. So the more that I buy into the narrative of like, oh, I'm overthinking, and now I judge myself because I'm overthinking, and now I feel guilty because I'm judging myself for judging. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I just keep buying into the story. So the mind's fucking like lapping it up. The mind's like, you're judging yourself. Hey, here's the last time you judged yourself. Look what happened. And then look what happened the last time you made yourself feel guilty. Oh, you're feeling guilty now. Oh, here's what. And it just keeps throwing things at you. Whereas when you see, like, you don't have to buy into any of that.
Yeah.
And the less it actually, let me put it this way: it takes your active participation in the thinking to create the experience of overthinking.
You're needed for it. Like, it's like you're the business partner to the thoughts. It can't run the business without you, basically.
Yeah. If you stop participating, that's it.
Then that's it.
If I'm playing PlayStation, right? If I'm playing PlayStation, it requires me to be sat at the TV with the controller in my hand and flicking the paddles and the buttons and pressing things for stuff to be happening.
Yeah.
Whereas if I see that it takes my active participation to play the game, if I want to stop playing the game, I just need to put the controller down.
Yeah.
And then I'm not playing the game. I'm not participating in it anymore. It's the same with what people would call overthinking or anxious thinking or whatever. It takes our active participation in the thinking for it to be overthinking. Whereas if we don't participate in it because we can choose not to, then
that's it.
It dissipates, right? It floats away.
No, I love that. Bro, quick one. What is your how important is it for you, especially as a man, this is more so for the males, to speak, to talk? How important is that to you? Like, to speak to others, to co-work?
Mate, it's literally my life, man. I spend, my working day talking to people.
Yeah.
Be it messages, be it emails, be it on the phone, on Zoom, recording podcasts.
Yeah.
Like, I get off this podcast, I'm going to have some lunch, I'm going to go spend some time with my mum, I'll be talking to her.
Yeah.
I'll go walk the dog, I'll probably be talking to the dog.
Yeah.
I come back and I've got 3 phone calls this afternoon, I'm talking to more people.
Yeah.
And it's a big part, because it's like, what I've really started to see is like, the more that I talk about and share my own journey, the more it helps me, but the more it helps someone else. And I saw a thing on Instagram the other day, and I can't remember the guy's name, but there was a UFC fight on the weekend, and the guy, I think he won the fight, and he said at 4 a.m. that morning, he found out that one of his best mates had committed suicide and taken his own life. And he said something in the interview which is really amazing. He said, like, I would rather have my mate crying on my shoulder than me be crying at their funeral.
Yeah.
And it's deep. Like, for the guys out there, I hope that really hits hard, man, because we've all been through it, bro. Like, I've considered it many times to take my own life, like back in like years ago, right? talking like 9-10 years ago. But like, if I didn't start talking about the stuff that I talk about with other people, you know, in whatever shape or form, then I might have still been stuck in that place. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, it's cool. Like, again, I would rather one of my mates came and spoke to me about the stuff that's going on than something horrible to happen, you know?
I
Because
think
that's the reality of it. And it's like, it's a beautiful thing to talk, because it's just experience. Like, there's not going to be any judgment. I can't remember the last time anyone came to me, be it a friend, my girlfriend, family member, someone I've just connected with, that's told me something that they're going through or something that they're feeling that's been dragging them down, and I've thrown shade at it or judged them for it. First thing I want to do is empathize, man, and just like, okay, let me hear you out.
I think something that a lot of people go through, and I can relate, is this is why it's important to strip back to the core of the issue, and that being the ego, what we've been speaking about today, and what we create. And I'll explain why. A lot of us, and this happened with me, I have an amazing support unit. Like, even just network, even like a you, for example, like I know so many good people that I could genuinely pick up the phone to and speak to, whether it be close, family, friends, or even just through networks and business. But I created such a persona that I wasn't the person who comes to you, you come to me. I created such a persona which was based on, I'm always all right, I'm Mr. Attack, that I genuinely, and I can literally understand this now from so many people's point of view, I couldn't even physically open my mouth to certain people. Like, it would make me just feel sick to my stomach. I can't pick up this phone and say, yo, I'm really struggling. And these are even the closest of people to me. And I realized as time went on, and even down to touching on the suicidal thoughts, like I've never, ever spoke on this in all my years of even sitting in front of a camera. Because I never related. I'll be honest, I never had the right sensitivity towards it, because I'm the type of person where I'll say, nah man, you got this, man. Come, forget all that. Come, put that on. No, forget all that. Like, I wouldn't really dig deep into it. I just, forget all that, we're good. But then I experienced it. Like, I experienced in my time away feeling like it would be easier if I wasn't here, and all this kind of thinking. And then I realized in hindsight, because when now I stepped outside of my issues, I realized that my issues were consuming me, but I'm nowhere even physically near them. But they seemed so real to me. And because of the ego and the persona I created, and literally the mask I was wearing, I couldn't take that mask off and then go and speak to people about it. Now I can. Like, now I can freely have this conversation and tell the world. But at the time, it was so difficult. So just for, like, to go on from what you said, and to people that do watch this, and anyone who knows me, you know, I never really talk about stuff like this. This is all really, really deep for me, yeah? But at the same time, it's because, number one, my experience has grown a lot. And in the time that I've been away, I've grown a lot. And two, I know there's so many people, especially guys, especially the man them watching this, that they have created such an aura, such a persona, should I say, such a brand, like a personal brand, which is a whole nother dangerous term, that they don't even want to, or feel like they can't. They can't. It doesn't fit their brand. They don't know how to speak on that, because the person they're speaking to will be so shocked and surprised, because the person, like everyone out there, has bought into the persona they've created. So yeah, I just think that's important, bro. Like, to be careful, not go.
And I was just gonna say, man, like, you know, I was thinking of it in a bit of a silly way, but it's a good way to relate to it. Like, you think of like the hardest man alive, right, or one of the most hardest men alive, Mike Tyson. He openly talks about his struggles. Yeah. And I don't think like, oh shit, like Mike Tyson's less of a man. Yeah. I think like, yeah, good for him for sharing. Same with Tyson Fury. You know, heavyweight champion of the world, undisputed, undefeated, and all of that. Never lost a fight. I don't think he's ever been knocked down like a couple times. Yeah. Big burly man, Gypsy King, and all this stuff. He talks about it openly, and I think good on him. Yeah. That's it, man. It's not like we think there's going to be this like judgment, and we're going to get disowned, and people are going to like cast us out of society because we've shown a bit of vulnerability. But the thing that the reason I'm sat here right now having this conversation is because I've seen that my vulnerability is my superpower.
Oh, I love that.
It's my strength.
Bro, I don't even want to say much more after that. That, for me, is it. Like, vulnerability is a superpower. And the reason why I'm grateful for you saying that, bro, is because our relationship off camera has formed through that. I feel very comfortable being vulnerable with you, which means I know you must be extremely amazing at what you do. I know your clients must feel the same way. I know you've been doing retreats and events recently as well. So I want people to definitely make sure they go out of their way to check you out. One last thing I want to ask you, and it's something I always ask people, is, because I'm very big on reading, what would you say are your most impactful books that have sort of pushed you towards who you are now?
I'll give you two, and they're by the same author. Being Human and Just a Thought, both by Amy Johnson.
Ooh, I've never heard of those.
They are life-changing books. Life-changing books. Like, Being Human is simply one of the best books I've ever written. No, read. I wish I wrote it. I've ever read. Like, that book seriously changed my life and the way that I started to see things, because it's broken down in such a easily digestible way. It's not like a heavy, like, oh, I'm gonna throw loads of stats and figures, and it's an easy read. It's so easily written, and the message in it is so beautiful, and it's about this stuff that we've been talking about, that we are not who we think we are. We are, you know, beyond that. You know, we are the consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. And it just talks about how we experience life in such a beautiful way. And like, so much stuff fell away from me, stories, beliefs, having read that book. And I read it like 4 times. And there's her newer book is Just a Thought, which I think came out this year or last year, which is also amazing. Like, those 2 books. And what I would say to anyone who's listening to this, who has liked the conversation or has disagreed or has felt like they got something from the conversation, like, come and hit me up on Instagram at I am Alex Manzi, and I would like strongly invite you to come and like talk to me about what you got from this episode, because you know what I'm happy to do is anyone who listens to this episode comes and hits me up and is willing to read Being Human, the book, in full. I'm happy to gift an hour of my time to talk about the learnings that they got from the book and how they can apply it to their life, because it's been a game changer for me.
Amazing. You heard it here. Amazing. And just from my personal point of view, like, no paid ads, no forced ads here. Like, I benefit massively from conversations with Alex, which is why, like, it's my pleasure to have you on for the first episode, bro. Like, you just broke that mold for me so well. You got me so excited now. I can't wait for people to take this in. And something that I'm going to end it on this. Something that Alex always says to me, and I was going to banter him about it the other day, but I thought, let me wait for the show. This is like Alex's go-to phrase. He always says stuff, loads of words. Then he always goes, and it's going to cut out, so I'm going to say this now. He always goes, I would love to know what you got from this. And that is how I want to close today. I would love to know what you guys got from this. Alex, thank you so much for joining me, my brother. Please, everyone, go and check out his channel. Other than that, bro, it's been another episode of Brand Therapy Podcast. We are back, season 3. Look out for many more. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you got from this episode. Peace.